This comes from Martha Postlethwaite. It's called Clearing. Do not try to serve the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is yours alone to sing falls into your open, cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to the world so worthy of rescue. Let me know how you're doing. Any questions you might have, anything you need to gain in this time together. I'm available here on YouTube Live and Instagram Live. You can find me also on Insight Timer, the meditation app. I provide live meditations Sundays evenings at 9, Wednesday mornings at 9. Most weeks. It's been a little busy this month with travel, so it's difficult to find me. Again, I'm Alon, rabbi in East Tennessee. I'm here most Fridays at noon Eastern Time. I want to share with you a few words. I was recently at Beit Tshuva, a drug and alcohol rehab in LA. These are some of the things I shared with them about Torah reading last week. So we talked about the value and benefit of suffering and trial. Beit Tshuva is a drug and alcohol rehab, so addicts tend to know what it means to suffer and gain appropriate perspective and empathy, compassion, sense of humor about all these things. Last week in the Torah, we read from Genesis chapter 34, which is the rape or the ravaging of Dinah, Jacob's daughter. She's taken by the residents of Shechem, the prince there, and Hamor, who by various stories takes her by force or takes her with seduction. And this became, of course, a stain on the family. And we understand those who are victims of violence and degradation to carry terrible amounts of shame and sorrow, embarrassment and grief. There's an image in our rabbinic teachings. The rabbis created a genre of literature called midrash, which we would know now as a sort of fan fiction. And they put in Dinah's mouth the phrase, "Whither shall I carry my shame? How can I live out my life with this great distress and shame of a marriage through sexual assault?" Let's just call it what it is, rape. So when dragged out of the town of Shem by her loving and assertive brothers, she says, I can't go anywhere else. It's too painful, too hard to live with what's happened. So her brother Shimon swore that he would marry her. It reminds me of when young boys say, "Mom, I'm going to build you a mansion." We offer more than we could possibly imagine or carry. But it's sweet, it's a tender gesture. We'd love to take the pain away from someone else. There is a human desire, a human capacity for that kind of compassion, that kind of reaching out, that kind of empathy with someone else's sorrow, pain, shame, grief, embarrassment. We do what we can. There are those who say in the rabbinic tradition that Job lived at that time. It's noted by the rabbis that Job, whether he was a real figure or just hyperbole, just a parable, that there's no time given to his existence, no religion given to him, no sense of who he is. But the rabbis imagine that when he remarries after all the tragedies of his life, he marries Dinah. Someone who knew pain could understand someone who knew pain. So while at Beit Tshuva, the drug and alcohol rehab in LA, I asked them, what is the nature of suffering and what do we gain from it? What can be learned from this experience? How might we grow? A lot of wonderful answers, a lot of profound answers, perspective, compassion, the ability to love more deeply, a kind of faith that is unshakable because we have met God and encountered the divine and the holy at the depths. Unlike someone who learns faith from a hymn, from a beautiful morning, learning faith when you're out trying to score a crack is less shakable when things go wrong. That was the question someone asked me about my own faith once. Did I have the faith of Job that I would respond to difficulty with renewed faith? Or was I only happy and embracing of God, the divine, my higher power, mystery, whatever word you want to use, when things were going well? That is certainly a challenge in life to feel holy, to feel the connection, to feel a sense of meaning and capacity, even when things are sorrowful, even when we are beset by despair. What can you do? How do you find gratitude even in moments of distress? How do you know, I think, the good things are coming to you even when you're in the gutter? Russell Brand, whatever you think of him, did have a book called The Gutter Is Within, or an article, I think it was. We all have it. I don't really think addiction is the only way to be an addict. I think fortunate are those whose addiction is material and obvious, whether it's gambling or alcohol or meth or sex. All of us have these processes that we use to tie ourselves up in knots that we can't let go of. Little obsessions, little compulsions, and sometimes big ones. Sometimes exterior directed, as is the case of alcohol or heroin. Sometimes interior directed, the constant rumination, the constant existential angst, the inability to move past our immediate worries and fantasies to live a true, authentic, and vulnerable life. They're all challenges. But with pain and suffering comes wisdom. That's what Proust said. We suffer, therefore we think. Though it's not clear that he really said it, it may be just apocryphal. What are you going to do with what you've learned? How are you going to make sense of the world in the space of all of your confusion and distress and unknowing? Can you make something out of it? Didn't Job? I mean, that's the point of the Midrash, the fan fiction, that Job understood trauma. Job understood sorrow, and so could relate to the shame and embarrassment and grief of Dinah. Or maybe that's not the point, but that's what I read. That those who are in the pit, there's another saying in the rabbinic teaching that um, the repentant, those who have suffered and renewed themselves, can attain heights that the simply righteous could never know. There's a value to going down in order to come up. Not inviting you to prostitute yourself to drugs or other vices, but I am inviting us all to use character building experiences, as unfortunate and unfun as they may be, to grow as humans, to become more, to become aware of compassion and perspective. There's an apocryphal story about the Peace Corps volunteer who went to Zaire, which is now Congo. If those of you who are old enough not to remember, he said, I went to Zaire to learn what it meant to be poor, and I learned what it meant to be rich. And I can attest to you that that was my experience in the Peace Corps as well. That having lived without running water for 2 years, having seen people despair and lose children in avoidable ways to malaria and dysentery, having people struggle with a corrupt system when all of their wisdom and depth and brightness were not snuffed out, but nearly so. I can take great joy in simple moments of my children's safety, of my own meek progress, my own good fortune to be able to vote. Life is vital. Jacob says, Katonti, I am so small for the grace that God has shown me. And by being small, by right sizing ourselves, we can find deep gratitude of needing less and feeling compassion and participation in a world that is both broken and awe inspiring. Have a wonderful week. Thanks for joining me. I'll end with a little singing. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Dee da dee. Dee 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 dee. Dee 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 dee. 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 Dee 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 dee.